Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are going to check out QNT's price chart and see what is happening. And I honestly do not really believe that we do have a whole lot to be worried about. I think we are right on the bullish track. But before we get into all that, I actually saw recently this very important clip from IMF. And if you remember, and if you are a regular viewer, you probably have watched the previous video, right? In the previous QNT video, we actually talked about tokenization and QNT's role in that area. And that was an article from QNT's website. So you might say, well, okay, they are of course going to be biased, right? Well, this clip actually was published after that article was published, and this is from IMF. So we definitely cannot say that these guys are biased. That's why I want to, in today's update, talk about this very important clip, because these guys are in this clip basically explaining the future of digital money. But if you listen closely, the whole thing actually does sound like that they are describing the exact problems that QNT was built to solve, and it is almost like an indirect request for the kind of infrastructure that Quant provides. So let's just break down this very important tweet from IMF, and then we are going to go on the live chat. Now, first things first, in this clip, they are talking about two very important problems when it comes to digital money, and the first one is going to be falling domino effect, because according to IMF, the biggest concern in here is the risk of programmable assets interacting in ways that could potentially, and God forbid, create a chain reaction. And they mention how multiple programs, for instance, can get stacked on top of each other, and in a crisis, these automated interactions can actually behave like falling dominoes. One platform triggers another, and before you know it, you have got a systemic risk, which is really not ideal. And this is actually exactly the type of scenarios that banks simply cannot afford, because a sudden issue in one asset shouldn't really spread across an entire financial system that is going to basically destroy every single thing. Now, guess what? Quant was actually designed to stop this kind of chain reaction. Why? Simple reason. Their fusion firewall and also the gradual system inside Overledger does give institutions full control over what interacts with their assets, and a smart contract on one system cannot really just trigger another contract somewhere else unless the institution is going to allow it. So basically, instead of everything being open and reactive like on traditional public chains, Overledger actually works as a controlled environment, and for central banks, this essentially acts like a circuit breaker, meaning if something goes wrong, they can definitely contain the issue instead of watching it spread big time, which is again really terrible. Now, the second important problem that IMF mentions is actually the fragmentation problem, and this is actually a very important concern, because they talk about how if tokens on different systems do not really communicate, markets can become isolated and fail to deliver faster and cheaper trading. And this is the exact Tower of Babel program that Gilbert Verdian has been warning about for many years, and we also talked about this thing in the previous video. For many years, Gilbert Verdian has talked about every single country launching their own digital currency on different platforms, and since none of them are able to talk to each other perfectly, this is going to create some massive problems down the road. And guess what? Overledger completely solves this by acting as a universal connector. Essentially, it links separate private blockchains without really forcing them to migrate to a single network, which is really nice. That means a digital pound, for instance, on one ledger can interact with a digital dollar on another, and the exchange can actually settle instantly and securely with the help of Overledger, and that is awesome. And by the way, without this interoperability layer, tokenization cannot really scale. Liquidity is going to get stuck inside isolated systems, and Overledger, well, it is exactly here to prevent this scenario from happening by letting these systems communicate to each other without sacrificing their privacy and security. Now, if you watch this clip until the end, the IMF actually hints that governments could potentially take a more active role as money evolves. And that's not just a prediction. No, this is a signal that regulation, control, and compliance will actually build into these new systems from day one. And Quant, guess what? In case that you are a new viewer, you should know that is already positioned for that kind of environment. They are working with the Bank of England on Project Rosalind and with UK Finance also on regulated liability network, and these are not experiments on the sidelines. Okay, it's very important to understand that these are fully core infrastructure projects. So while crypto projects, not all of them but definitely most of them, are trying to avoid regulation, Quant is actually building the tools that let regulators enforce their policies directly in the digital money systems. And when the IMF says that specific policies may be needed, they are talking about programmable rules, identity layers, access controls, and these are all exactly the elements that Overledger is designed to handle, which again increases the chances of Quant attracting a whole lot of adoption as we go forward. Now, let's talk about what all this means for QNT itself, because the IMF's message isn't really about technology. No, this message, in my view, is about the kind of infrastructure that the world actually will need if tokenization is going to work at a global scale. The key point in here is very important to understand is that the IMF is basically saying to you, if we want tokenization to function safely, there must be a regulated, interoperable layer underneath every single thing. And trust me, this exact sentence is actually in this clip. And that layer, in my view, is exactly where Quant is positioned. Now, back to QNT token itself. You see, it's very important to understand for those of you who are new viewers, QNT is not really a token you hold for votes. No, QNT is actually a utility asset, meaning if a bank or a payment provider wants to use Overledger to move tokenized assets between different systems, then okay, they need two things. Number one, they're gonna need a license, and number two, they will need QNT token itself to pay the fees. And Overledger in here is not really a passive network. Every transaction running through it requires QNT at the gateway level. And if tokenization is going to become part of everyday financial infrastructure, and I do think that it is going to end up being that big, then okay, the usage of QNT follows naturally because the systems cannot really run without it. It's very important to understand that. Now, also, another important part of Quant's model is the gateway lockup. You see, institutions that run Overledger gateways must actually lock up QNT token to secure bandwidth on the network. And this, my friends, means the more adoption that we are going to see in the future, especially I would say from banks, payment systems, and also central bank projects, okay, the more QNT is going to get removed from circulation, and you can definitely see some very interesting transactions taking place in the last couple of weeks, which in this channel we also talked about it. Now, as tokenization is going to spread, I'm willing to bet that the supply of available QNT is just going to get tighter and tighter, and demand is going to also increase because more institutions are going to need access, while at the same time it's very important to understand that the total supply of Quant is actually capped at, I think it was about 14.5 million. And also the circulating supply, I think right now is somewhere around 12.5 million tokens. So overall, I think this is actually going to create a scenario where in it, you're just going to see the token appreciate in the mid to long term, okay? I'm not talking about these news because I think because of these, we are going to see some massive pumps in the next day or two. Don't get me wrong, we can definitely see some big moves, but it's not really going to be because of these types of news and events. I think the effects of this are going to show themselves in the mid to long term. So if you are a fair value investor, I think you should definitely do your due diligence about QNT and come up with your own conclusion. And then if you think, yeah, you know what, this is a great token, then okay, welcome to the party. I think you might still be very much early since not a lot of people right now are paying attention to the crypto market. So As the conclusion, the IMF basically in this clip confirmed that interoperability is actually the weak spot in the future of digital money, and without it, tokenization doesn't really scale, and markets are going to stay very much fragmented, and Quant is actually one of the only companies with a patent solution to this problem, and they are already working with major institutions that help shape global policy. And this, I think, shifts QNT from being just a speculative token to hopefully becoming part of the core financial infrastructure. And if you care about fundamentals, okay, what better reason do you want to invest in a project? I think in terms of fundamentals in Quant, we are absolutely on the right direction. And as we go forward, more and more people are going to notice that the whole system is actually fragmented, and they are going to say, yeah, you know what, we do need a technology that is going to connect everything in here. And well, if you just define your problem, you immediately going to realize that your solution is what? Yep, you guessed it right. It is called Quant Network. So overall, in terms of fundamentals, again, this is yet another important confirmation that Quant's technology is not really just a nice to have. No, it is a must have, and it's very important to understand that. Now, having said all that, let's go on the live chart and see what is happening in the short term, because if you remember the last time that we talked about Quant, let's just do this, okay? We were right around these areas, and the idea was that, well, okay, maybe this is going to be the start of a correction structure on the downside. Now, let me be very clear. Just because I said we are going to get a move down doesn't really mean that I am bearish on Quant, okay? You need to understand this. Why is that? Because if you want to argue in terms of Helios waves, which is my field of works, actually, we're gonna have our final low around this region. Let's say this is like a very important support, then okay, you must be able to find off of the lows a 5 wave on the upside. This specific scenario right in here is called an impulsive movement. Rules for it are, we should not have overlapping of the waves between wave 2 and 4, excuse me, there we go, my mouse is a bit glitchy, and under any kind of circumstances, our wave 3 is not really allowed to be a smallest wave. And in terms of the sub waves, you know it, if you are a regular viewer of the channel, we're gonna have 5 wave up into wave 1, 3, and 5. There we go, sorry about that. Okay, and for wave 2 and 4, we can consider different patterns. Let's say maybe WXY for our wave 2, and yes, an ABC structure into wave 2. Now, if we end up having a 5 wave off of the lows, it definitely can be a great sign, but it's not really going to be enough. After completing a 5 wave, what you want to see is a consolidation pattern, just a correction structure that is going to take some time, and it is going to be a slow and choppy. Now, having said all that, let's go on the live chart, and okay, so maybe it's best to go actually on H1 time frame. So what do you have in here? In my view, there's a very high chance that off of the lows in this area, we do have a bit of a 5 wave up followed by a correction down, maybe a WXY or maybe an ABC expanded flat, and on a higher degree, we are going to have 5 up into 1, correction for wave 2, and well, if the scenario is happening, what's next? You know it, a fantastic move up into wave 3, 4, 5, and I think we are in the process of completing the sub waves for this massive wave 3, but here's the thing, we might be just at the beginning of the process, and the beginning of the process might actually take a bit of time, not really that much time. I'm talking about maybe like maximum 5 to 7 more days. You see, in my view, now that we got another short-term move up from here to about this point, we still have, guess what, a 5 wave on the upside, and here is how I can argue that. I think we can say, maybe this is 1, this is 2, this is wave 3, this is 4, this is another move up into wave 5, and on a higher degree, that 5 wave is going to be into, excuse me, this wave 5 right in here, and again, after a 5 wave up, like we said it earlier, what's going to be next? You know it, a correction, a structure on the downside. So that's why I want to call for a bit of a move down. And I want to be very clear. There's like actually a very much realistic chance that in Quant, we're not even going to get like that move down. And from here, we may see a massive move on the upside. But again, you know my stance on these things. Let's just count on the worst case scenario in the short term between all the bullish ones to play out. So if it happens, we're going to be fully ready for it. If it doesn't happen, okay, fair enough. We're just going to be pleasantly surprised, which is always nice. Now, why do I want to see another move down in QNT? Or let's just actually say this. Why is it that I said there is like a realistic chance that from here we may see a massive bounce? Because if I just go on maybe 5-minute time frame, okay. By the way, my entire family actually has come to visit, so if you are hearing some noise, apologies in advance. My nephews are actually quite loud. Hopefully the microphone is going to be able to reduce the noise a little bit. Now, here is why I think from here we may even see like a great move on the upside. I think you are able to find off of the lowest low in here a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that actually goes against my bearish scenario in the short term, indicating from here we're gonna get a move down. Why? Because if the bearish count that I have in my mind is in play, then okay, this has to be a correction as opposed to an impulse. And like, do not get me wrong, I'm absolutely able to argue maybe this is like a WXY in form of a double zigzag, but again, I'm trying to explain there is very much a realistic chance that from here we may see a massive bounce, and if we see it, it's not really going to be surprising at all. But you know what, let's just count on the worst case scenario to play out, and I want to consider the possibility of having maybe an A, B, C zigzag, which the subways for it are going to be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down into a correction for wave B, maybe ABC, maybe WXY, maybe even a triangle, doesn't matter, and then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down into C. And if I just go on the live chart and maybe zoom in a little bit more, okay, so what do you have in here? I do think since this is kind of a strong initial move down, maybe this is like a wave 1 correction for wave 2, another move down into wave 3, correction for 4, another move on the downside into our wave 5, followed by a WXY up. Well, if this is happening, we do actually have a bit of a bearish count, indicating the next move might be a 1, 2, 3, excuse me, again, let's just draw it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down, in order to at least take this important low in here about, let's say, $92.50. But I think we are probably going to go quite a bit lower than that. Maybe even somewhere around like $87, $88 can be a better target in order to hopefully finally complete the subwaves for an ABC zigzag. And pay attention to what I'm about to tell you. You see, on a higher degree, if I just go on H1 time frame, we just said that this is going to be a 1-2. Guess what? I still believe that this is going to be the beginning of our wave 3, but at the beginning, this is going to be also yet another 1 and a 2, but on a lower degree relative to this one. And then it is hopefully going to be time to have some insane moves on the upside into a series of wave 3s. And it's very important to understand that in terms of Elios waves, we do say that wave 3 is usually quite a strong and sharp move on the upside. So for like very short term, maybe count on another move down in order to get to these levels, and then count on a great move on the upside. And by the way, I forgot to tell you this move down, if it is going to happen, it's just going to take maybe maximum 4 to 7, 8 days. And then for the next, let's say 3 to 4 weeks, I do expect some great moves on the upside in quant, hopefully in order to really start our magnificent bull run. And my final point, do you remember in the previous video I said the $100 level doesn't really mean a whole lot? This is what you see. We were in here way past the $100 level. We were somewhere around even $110. But what happened next? We just immediately got back under 100. So it seems like that the price is not really respecting the $100 area. But what is actually respecting, in my view, is going to be this beautiful resistance area between 110 to 130. Excuse me. I think I just moved this one by accident. There we go. Let's just stretch this a bit more. $110 to $130. And as long as we are under it, maybe we should be a bit more patient. But trust me, the moments that we get a break out of here, you are going to see the real party finally getting started. So overall, as you can see, we are, in my view, fully on the right track. And as long as we are not taking this important low about, let's say, $69.50, I think we are good to go. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in Quant's price chart. Anyway, if you found any value in my content, I would really appreciate if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter. And if you want more, maybe you want a complete analysis for your own specific crypto, or maybe you want to learn some decent TA in order to be able to make good money in the markets, you can become a member and ask me anything you want. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.